Good morning. If you are just joining, we are starting our first Fundraising Friday webinar. I'm sitting here with my coffee and excited to talk to you guys about storytelling today. We'll wait just a couple more minutes to see if anyone jumps in, and then we will get started. Hopefully everyone's having a great day so far. I know I'm glad it's Friday. It's been a busy week with the walk coming up here in just less than 2 months. So lots and lots of stuff happening, all good stuff. We're excited. Exciting changes coming soon, so keep an eye out for more details. And a little tip for those that are listening, those that listen later on the recording. Each week when we do these Fundraising Friday webinars, they're actually sort of the completion of some opportunities to meet with other people in person. So there's some great, wonderful supporters who've been fundraising through the walk for quite a while, who've opened up their homes or have offered to meet at Panera. There's a schedule of that now available online. You can see it also on our Facebook. But if you'd like more information, definitely feel free to reach out to me. Other than that, these recordings will be made available. We'll put them on a blog. The link will be coming out to you shortly. And best of all, when you listen to these the Fundraising Friday webinars, or you meet with one of our wonderful volunteers in person, the content actually sets you up for the incentive that takes place the following week. So you're getting a little bit of a sneak peek on what to expect for the challenge that will go out next Wednesday. So yeah, pretty exciting stuff. All right, it's 8:32. I want to be respectful of everyone's time. So let's get started. Oh, I'm going too fast. There we go. So I will be your host, Kristina Linden. If you have not met me before, I am kind of still new to JDRF. I've been around for just a little bit over a year. It was a year in early May for me. And I'm the development manager over our peer-to-peer programs. So our One Walk, our Ride to Cure Diabetes, and a few other things in between. With that, let's just do a quick review of our agenda for today for this webinar. Do a quick welcome and introduction. Welcome, so we can check that off the list. Glad you guys are here and able to join. Also going to talk about why storytelling matters, how to tell your story, and then I'll open up for questions and we will conclude. So with that, let's get started. A quick introduction of my type 1 story. I actually do not have type 1. I've never cared for someone that has type 1. And by that I mean physically, medically cared for someone. I care about a lot of people that have type 1. But this is my connection. This is my cousin Brett. I often think of him as my knucklehead younger brother. But Brett was diagnosed with type 1 when he was about 11 or 12 years old. He's now 24. I think he just turned 24 in May. So he's lived with it for, just about half his life, maybe a little bit more. And I got to be honest, before I joined JDRF, I really did not appreciate how difficult his life was and how much of managing his disease that he could not help. But he's the reason that I came to JDRF. He is the inspiration that I thought of when I did the Ride to Cure last year. I went to Santa Fe and rode 32 miles. I was pretty proud of that, but he's the one that I rode for. So that's what brings me to JDRF, and that's my T1D story. So why storytelling matters. If you suffered through a decade of your life and watched Game of Thrones, you instantly know the connection and where I'm going here. If not, I will give you just a very, very, very quick recap of such a long and brutal, arduous story for those that suffered through. Basically, there's 7 kingdoms and there's somebody that sits on the quote-unquote Iron Throne, and they are in charge of all of the kingdoms. Throughout the 8 seasons, there's characters that you love, there's characters that you hate, all of these crazy twists and turns, people that die that you were rooting for, people that keep living that you hate, and all along you have your sort of favorites of who you definitely want to be on the throne and who you definitely do not want to be on the throne. At the very end of the season, the very last, one of the last few scenes, a group of contenders for the throne are sitting around after a big battle and trying to decide who should be on the throne. One of the possible contenders stands up and gives a speech saying, what unites people? Is it armies? Is it gold? Is it flags? It's stories. There's nothing more powerful in the world than a good story. Nothing can stop it. No enemy can defeat it. And then he goes on to say, who among us has the best story? I won't give it away, but he says, this is the person that has the best story. He tells that person's story, and everyone in the council finally unanimously agrees who should be on the Iron Throne. So, great example of why storytelling matters. You could get the Iron Throne. Okay, but in all seriousness, why does storytelling matter? One, and first and foremost, is that it establishes a need for a cure, prevention, and treatment. If you don't know about type 1, you don't realize how much it really impacts and interrupts people's life. You don't realize that there is a life-threatening aspect to it. And if you have never heard of JDRF or you've never heard of type 1 diabetes, you don't really realize that there's a reason and a need to give to this organization. But when you tell your story about what it's like to live with type 1 or who you care about that lives with type 1, suddenly people that are unaware realize that there's a need for a cure. That in turn leads to, potentially supporting, whether that's giving their time and volunteering or it's making a donation, to your walk page. Maybe they'll show up and walk with you. Again, establishing a need for a cure happens when you tell your story. Another reason why storytelling matters is that it sets your cause apart from the crowd. So this is actually on the wall of one of our great corporate supporters, Keeley Companies. In their program, Keeley Cares, they support even more nonprofit organizations than this. You'll see JDRF is right there over on the right-hand side, so pretty proud of that to make it on the wall. But even in this kind of small grouping of nonprofits, we're in good company here. There's a lot of great worthy causes out there. There's some that, I've even donated to other than to JDRF. You might see the same thing. Or even, Children's Hospital. Maybe your child was cared for. That's where they were initially diagnosed. So great worthy causes out there. Why should someone give to JDRF? Why should someone give to your walk page? Well, that's where your story comes in. When you tell your story, it signifies that JDRF is important. People are getting all sorts of, asks to donate. Now on Facebook, it's popular to do that fundraise for your birthday thing. So why would someone choose to donate to your charity over all of these other great causes? And it's when you tell your story, it makes it personal for them. So storytelling matters because it sets your cause apart from the crowd. Storytelling also matters because it makes T1D personal to people without it. So kind of building off of the last one. Just to kind of be completely honest with you, I was really ignorant about what it's like to live with type 1 before I started working here. Even having my cousin and knowing some of the struggles that he went through and times that he was in the hospital, some of the scares, some of the struggles that he had, I really did not appreciate how hard it was to live with that. And even now, I don't live with it every day. So it's easy for me to go about my day and forget that I don't have to check my blood sugar. I don't have to worry about my dosing or my site change and count how many days it's been. I don't have to do any of those things. So when you tell your story, People that don't get it because they just don't live with it, it suddenly matters to them, that cause. I hear all the time the myths that people have to deal with, right, when it comes to living with type 1. And here's just a funny little thing. You know, it's not from eating too much sugar. It's not cured by insulin. It's not just for kids. It's not preventable, contagious. You can't outgrow it, and you can't have a more healthy lifestyle to cure it, so to speak. There's so many other things that people, I've heard from so many moms and so many grandparents, individuals that have said, gosh, it's so frustrating how people don't get it. When you tell your story, it suddenly becomes personal to people that don't get it. They get it in a way, in a small way. Okay, another reason why storytelling matters. It maximizes your fundraising impact, meaning more money, more donations. Everybody wants that for their walk page. So here's 2 examples of some fundraising pages. Both wonderful people, wonderful teams. They're doing a great job. But let's say that, you know, you're a coworker, not super close to the person that's sending you this page, or a friend of a friend sends it to you. Which page would you be more likely to give to? The one on the left has that stock photo and stock text. Okay, there's nothing really that draws me into that that's super appealing if I don't know about this charity or this cause. And then the one on the right is personal, right? It's a picture of a little guy who has type 1, and below it's sharing a little bit about his story and what it's been like and why they're supporting JDRF through the walk. People want to give to people, not pages. And just as being a professional fundraiser, I can tell you from the data point of view that people are about 7 times more likely to give to a page that's personalized than to a page that's not. That's not to say that nobody's going to donate to your page. If you know you're busy and you throw up one that has the stock text and the stock photo, that's why we provide that. Life gets busy, we get it. But if you can take the time to really personalize it, tell your story, people are going to be more likely to give. That draws them in. That's compelling. So a quick recap of why storytelling matters. 1, you could win the Iron Throne. 2, you can establish a need. I misspelled establish here, so please forgive. It sets your cause apart from the crowd. It makes T1D personal to people without it. And it maximizes your fundraising impact. So let's move on to how to tell your story. The first thing you want to do is pick your medium. There's a ton of ways out there. I think nowadays we mostly think about social media because it is such a part of our life. In fact, a lot of times it's where life actually happens or where we catalog our life. But there's a ton of different ways to tell your story, whether it's on Instagram, whether it's on Twitter, whether it's on Facebook, Snapchat. You can be creative. You can tell it through pictures, through videos. One thing that I saw that was really cool was a mom that did a Facebook Live at 2 a.m. and said, you know, hey guys, this is my first Facebook Live. This is a pretty regular part of my life now because my son has type 1. I have to get up at 2 a.m. and check his blood sugar. So I'm going to go in there and show you what it's like to do that. And I challenge you that whatever his blood sugar is, to make a donation in that amount. So she went in and checked his blood sugar, and it was very, very compelling. People who don't understand it, you know, going back to why it's important, people that don't live with it don't understand all of those sleepless nights, literally every night when you're a parent or you're an adult with it. So that's a really great example of how to tell that in a medium. Another way to do it might be to draw a picture. Are you handy? Do you want to do like a comic strip, or maybe your kid draws a picture of what it's like to live with type 1? Maybe you're a writer. Maybe you want to write out a letter and send it to your family, friends, coworkers, an email, just to tell people, here, you may not know this about me, but I have type 1 and this is what it's like. Maybe it's writing out writing out your story in a Facebook post and just really sharing, giving people an inside view of what is that like. So there's so many different ways, places where you can tell your story. Pick 1, pick 2, pick all of them, but pick one that works best for you and your family. Another thing to consider when deciding how to tell your story is to choose a narrator. I think the most obvious one is you. That could be you, the parent of a child with type 1. That could be you, a person that has type 1. But maybe it's your grandparents. What's it like to be a grandparent of a child that has type 1? What's it like when they come to visit for the weekend or over the summer holiday and having to watch your children manage and worry about their child's disease? What's that like from their perspective? Maybe it's the family dog. One of my coworkers, she does a letter writing campaign every year, and she's been so creative in finding a way to tell her daughter's story in a new and fresh way every single year. And one year, she actually told it from the perspective of her dog, and the dog seeing her daughter be feeling not good sometimes, and all the supplies that she had to carry around, and that he felt bad that he couldn't help her, and it was just such a unique, fun thing. So get creative. The narrator doesn't necessarily have to be a person. You can write it from the perspective of your family pet or something like that. Another potential narrator is your best friend. I remember a friend of a little girl, I think she was 9 years old, that decided that she wanted to do a lemonade stand for her little friend that had type 1. And her mom shared a picture and wrote out, like, this is what my daughter decided she wanted to do. This is why she wanted to do it. That's compelling. Again, that's seeing someone be empathetic to someone else. That's compelling to someone who isn't familiar with the disease, going, wow, there's a lot of people that care about this. This impacts a lot of people's lives. Maybe it's the teacher. What's it like for your child's teacher or coach to have an athlete or a student that lives with this disease? How involved are they? Do they worry about, having fruit snacks or gummies, or if they're going to make a mistake, or, seeing them succeed when they're not allowing this disease to hold them back from being a great athlete or excelling at math or spelling or whatever that looks like? Yeah, so just get creative. Doesn't have to be you. It certainly can. It's your story. But yeah, feel free to choose some other narrators. Another thing to consider when you're deciding how to tell your story is, what is it that makes it your story? In the type 1 community, there's a lot of common themes. We all have sort of a diagnosis story. We have scary points in it. We're generally all taking the same thing to help manage our care. But the truth is, nobody is the same. And nobody has the exact same story that you do, even if they were diagnosed at the same age, even if they were diagnosed by the same hospital or they're related to you. Nobody has the same story. So think about what makes it your story. What are the unique points about your story? And here's an example. At our gala this year, we actually had some videos of families that had sent out some appeals to their friends and family to ask them to support this cause. They all had really unique, different points of view, even though they were telling approximately the same thing. And one thing that stuck out to me was the family that talked about that when their son was first diagnosed, that they literally had to pin him down those first couple of days to give him his insulin. And the mom said, afterwards I was talking to my husband and saying, gosh, if that were anything other than trying to save his life, that would be child abuse. And that is something that just so resonated with me. Everyone else has some sort of line or meeting or instance or memory that is just only happened in your story. So think about that when you're deciding how to tell your story. What makes it your story? And finally, in how to tell your story, don't stop telling it. You've probably heard of this, the rule of 7, but people need to see your message at least 7 times before they take action or before they make a donation. So just because you told it once, or just because you told it in an email, or just because you told it from the perspective of the dog, doesn't mean somebody's going to take action and they know. There's a new family that's fundraising for us. I'm really excited about just their energy and some of the ideas that they're coming up with. But she was sharing with me that, you've probably heard type 1 doesn't ever take a day off. If you haven't heard of it, you definitely know it. And she has decided that she's going to every day show something to do with living with type 1 to just keep that fresh of mind. Again, people who don't get this, they don't live with this, it's real easy for us to forget about it. It's real easy for us to have no empathy, not intentionally, but to really not understand what it's like to live with it every single day and how much it takes up of that mental energy that you have. So don't stop telling your story. Tell it over and over again. Tell it in different ways. Tell it to different people. But ultimately, I hope that you take away from this that your story matters. Your story makes a difference. So just a quick recap of that. When you're thinking about how to tell your story, pick your medium, choose the narrator, make it what makes it your story, and don't stop telling it. So that brings us to the end of our lovely webinar. We have about 10 minutes left, 9 minutes left actually. So here I want to open it up for questions. Feel free to send them through the chat. Feel free to unmute yourself and share it. We'll give just people a couple of minutes to do that. Otherwise, we will send you on your day. Anyone? Awesome. Well, listen, guys, I hope you have a fantastic Friday. I hope that you're inspired to tell your story and you have a lot of great inspiration and ideas here. And I'm looking forward to seeing all of your stories. And story, by the way, is a key clue for what the challenge will be next week. So with that in mind, I will send you about your way and look forward to talking to you next Friday. Thanks.